Okay, so this is a story that, again, my students really respond to, which is, it's not quite as embarrassing as the violin story, but this is a story that basically I was teaching writing classes, as I am wont to do, and we were working a lot on structure. And the thing about me is I'm a total control freak, so I like things that I feel like I can understand and place, and that's where I get really nerdy and love teaching writing, love thinking about writing, but especially like, what does Aristotle have to say about Act 1? How does that relate to what Robert McKee has to say? But like, I just like thinking about this stuff. So we were working our way through structure in my fundamentals class, and we were getting to Act 2 and what that's like. And basically the embarrassing part of the story is that I was totally stuck on my own piece, on my own Act 2. And I was just feeling like the hackiest of Gene Hackmans, like just like showing up to class being like, guys, this is how you write a great Act 2. And I was totally screwed on my own Act 2. And I wasn't on Act 1 and Act 3 because I feel like those are acts you can control better. Like Act 1, you're setting up a world, you've got your inciting incident, you feel like, to me, beginnings and endings are very easy. Middles suck. Like the middle of a story is just a terrifying place to be as a writer. And so I called in a friend of mine who also teaches writing and wrote Coming to America and is one of my favorite, Barry Blaustein's writer and writing teacher and people in my life. He's like a dear person in my life. And I was like, can you come in and just help with this Act 2 class? And you know, it was one of those things, it was like a writing class. It was when I was first starting teaching, so we're like in some basically terrible church basement, but it was like so special because there's something that happens when you teach writing where the students and the teacher give each other something that's very mutually synergistic and just like a beautiful interchange of molecules and particles and is very uplifting. That's been my experience. Like there's very few places in life where I feel like it matters that I am, and one is like writing at my desk and the other is teaching. Those two places just matter to me a lot. People depend on me and it feels good. So there I am in this church basement with my students, and it's like we're gonna crack this Act 2, you know, code. And Barry comes in and sits in, and he's always so relaxed. So I'll be like, guys, today we're working on inciting incidences, and this is the thing that catapults your story into happening. And he's like, yeah, it's the thing that happens. Like he just has a way of talking that's really beautiful. You know, the way that we use language is the way that we interact with the thing that we're actually labeling. And so his way of using language is very calming on the nervous system. Like it's the thing that happens. And so he came in, he sat in. I teach ferociously for the 3 hours that I teach. The students leave, everybody's buzzing. It was a great class. We're all standing outside of this church talking afterwards. And I'm like, Barry, I know I just like taught this class on Act 2 or whatever, but I'm really stuck on my Act 2. What do you think I should do? And Barry was like, why don't you just let them talk? And I was like, who? He was like, the characters. And it was just like a huge, like the next morning I woke up early, I was inspired, happy to get out of bed, which is not most writers' state of being, but that day I was. I went to a cafe, and it was just like these characters that I'd been controlling through all of Act 1 that I'd figured out, they're like accelerated Act 3, like these characters that I'd really like just been interacting with in a very tightly wound way. All of a sudden I just took my foot off the brake and was like, you drive. Like, how fast do you want to go? What do you want to do? And therein poured my Act 2. It just, and I'm not saying that it like, it didn't flow out of me in a perfectly formed way. It wasn't like that. It just that the framework of the perfectly formed act did flow out of me in letting go of control. And it's just a great lesson from a seasoned writer, which is sometimes you just have to take your foot and off the brake and like let them drive. And just, this is about eventually surrendering control and not being the most important person in the room at all times. You know, in Act 1 and Act 3, you can be the most important ego-driven person in the room, but at some point the nature of story structure is that it makes you release. And you have to release. The audience can sense it. They can sense that you're holding on too tightly, and they want you to trust and let go and be surprised too. So I'll just always remember, like, whenever I drive by that church that's on Olympic and Hauser, and I always see the ghosts of writing students past, and, you know, that night I was definitely one of the students, like, outside of the class, like, hanging with Barry, just being like, what should I do here? And him just saying, like, let them talk. And I think that's a great tool if you're feeling stuck, is just to say, whatever you're writing, even if you're writing a piece of prose, is just to say, like, what does this writing want to say today, rather than what do I want to say? Just what is something outside of me? And it sounds very hippie, which I am, but just like surrendering to something outside of yourself, but especially in Act 2. And I would say, because Act 2 is a little bit the desert, and it is the place where structurally there's some wandering room. So especially in Act 2, I feel like your characters have been good. They've behaved. They've stayed with you through your thesis in Act 1. And when you do take your foot off the brake, it's really a beautiful thing to see what they've been waiting to say, which may surprise you. So that's my writing tip for the day. Let go of control.